Hello, Rick, and hello,
Hey,
everybody.
Carlos.
This has been only really 2 weeks that we were in a brief break of recording, and the reason being was my fault. I was taking what I want to think is a well-deserved vacation, but I was away, and I'm sorry that we didn't publish any content. We should have, because that's the right way to do it. Keep constantly publishing content. But anyway, here we are, and as always, we have really packed episode today. So today we're going to be talking about an interview that Wire had with Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, about the future of the internet where search isn't king. So very interesting comments there. Also, I want to talk about a tweet from Lily Ray about recovering from the helpful content update. We will have some great tips as usual from Rick about how to avoid or which um, common content writing pitfalls to avoid. Then we are going to talk about AI as usual, because there is no episode without talking about AI and how AI is only an arbitrage opportunity, not a long-term strategy. And this is coming from a blog from Ahrefs. And a great debate around, is EEAT a ranking factor? There was an article in Search Engine Journal, pretty much talking about that. And last but not least, but we always save the best for last, is how to make content stand out and be uniquely yours. And of course, Rick, our content expert, is going to walk us through that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Google prepared for a future where search isn't king. So we're assuming that search is king today. But yeah, I think search is what powers most of the internet. We have seen over the last few months, really, how AI is taking over lots of aspects of the web. And what Sundar Pichai is pretty much saying is, and we saw just recently that Google announced that Bard is now Gemini, and we also saw the launch of Gemini a few weeks ago, or maybe like a month and a half ago or so. So they're starting to show signs on how the way they're going. So I think that the usual search box is going to be on second. Um, is going to take us a backseat in the future. I don't think this will be overnight, but pretty much what Sundar is saying is that they're going to launch Gemini as your personal search agent, so to speak. And I think the interesting part of it is that it's going to be multimodal. So the model that they're building is not only based on text, as some of the models from OpenAI. This model is also based on images and audio. So it's going to be a much more or a richer experience, which is very, very interesting. I think the other interesting thing is that they might launch a subscription. So let's say if how ChatGPT Plus is $20, or YouTube Premium. I don't know how much YouTube Premium is, but you can pay a subscription to YouTube, and then it will be ad free. So maybe we'll see a version of Gemini where you pay $20 a month and then you don't get any ads, or maybe you get some other features. And maybe that's going to compensate for all the computational power that they need to spend on to be able to power these AI models. But I think it's also another way for them to compete with ChatGPT and these other AI agents that are coming out. So anyway, I think it's interesting. I think Google is starting to show where they're going. I always thought that AI is probably going to be AI powered search is going to be part of the future, or a big part of the future, but it's not going to be an overnight flipping the switch kind of thing. But I think Google's starting to take steps towards that. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think we're looking at a time where search isn't king. I think search will still be king. It's just how people search is changing. Right? You have younger generations who opt for video first, going to platforms like TikTok to find out how to do things and what things are. And I think these AI chatbots, they've changed how I search already, Carlos. And one thing I talked to my team about this morning was, when I need an answer to a question, help with something, I go to Google and I type in my search query. I start scanning the results, looking for something that's in line with what I'm experiencing, what I want to know. I may end up in an article and scanning through that to find exactly what I'm looking for. And that works. But what I've noticed, with all of the chatbot usage I've had lately is I can ask it a very specific question and describe my scenario to it, and I get an answer that's customized to me. It's customized to exactly what I want. I'm not having to scan through content to find what I'm looking for. And that's going to be a major impact on how search changes. People are going to start getting answers that are customized to their experience, to what they're going through right now. And that's hard to do in Google, which is why I think, and this is nothing new, right? We've been talking about it a while. All of that top of the funnel traffic is going to disappear. Unless linking within those AI results is something we can optimize for, and traffic comes through that way, through that search generative experience, and they're going into your article to learn more if necessary. But I think the way we're searching is going to change significantly in the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what would be cool? So, and I noticed now that I was traveling and I was in a different continent, that of course my search results were relevant for the geo that I was at. So it'd be nice to tell the agent, hey, I'm just taking a vacation. So can you please serve me results that are relevant to what I'm looking for in my geo or in other geos? But anyway, another interesting thing to keep watching for. So that was Sundar Pichai in Wired. Okay, let's talk about the helpful content update recovery. So Lily Ray, somebody that we admire and respect very much here in Crowd Content, and we had her a few times here. She has been following on the helpful content update very closely, and she did an analysis on 130 sites that were hit by the helpful content update, or HCU for short. When we talk about being hit, is that they lost a lot of traffic after the update, and she did an analysis before and after, and out of those 130 sites that she analyzed, only one have seen some recovery. The other 129 have seen continue decrease in traffic and rankings and whatnot. So it's been a really tough time for people who have been hit by the HCU. Now, the question, and some people in the LinkedIn thread, and the Twitter thread, were commenting and asking, well, was their content good or not? And of course, I think, well, Google deemed it not to be helpful, and that's why probably these people have been hit. But there are many questions here, and also, like you asked me, Rick, before starting recording, like, have these site owners put any effort in recovery, right? And I think they fall in two camps. Ones that have the hope strategy, like just hoping that this is just a blip and the sites will magically recover when the dust settles. And the other camp is people are actively working on recovering their sites. So, but talking to especially media publishers and those that their main business model is based on monetizing traffic are the ones that have seen the biggest drops. You and I, we have looked at some sites that are owned by media publishers where the content is actually not bad or is actually good quality content, but they've still been hit. And I think it might be also because of the user experience, that maybe they're over monetizing their audience. I think it's just Google is raising a much higher bar for media publishers than they would do for brands or product companies. Anyway, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Right?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, if you're waiting on a correction, it's not coming. Like, you've got to put the effort in. Right? You've got to, and like you said, we've seen some prospects come through lately who were hit hard, and they actually had really good content. Helpful content, better in some cases than the ranking competitors. But things like site speed and UX was dragging them down, or like you mentioned, over monetization on ad revenue, where the ads became intrusive. If you're having to look over and move ads aside to try to get to the next paragraph in your content, That's no good. Um, so bottom line, if you're not taking action to recover, if you were hit hard by helpful content, you have to take action. You've got to align with search intent. You've got to provide unique value. You've got to provide answers. You've got to provide a good site user experience. And on top of that, if your site is littered with unhelpful content, you've got to cut it loose. Don't no index it. No, like remove it or improve it, one or the other. If you're not going to take these steps, you're not going to recover.
Yeah. That's a great point that you raised, because in the thread, some people ask, what is better to do? Is it to refresh and eliminate, like refresh existing old content or existing content and eliminate unhelpful content, or create new content? And what Lily said was, number one, 100%, like 1,000%. She said, like, focus on refreshing and eliminating unhelpful content. So, and we agree with that. I think you do better having less content that is much higher quality than creating a bunch of new content, because the all bad content might be dragging down all of your efforts. So again, a reminder of always have fresh content and deprecate content that is either irrelevant or that it's not helpful at all. Sometimes when we look at content, we say, you know what, you might as well just start from scratch. So because it's not fixable, right? Or maybe it's just irrelevant. It's just outdated. So another good point, Rick. Okay, well, let's move on into common content writing pitfalls to avoid. And I pass it on to you, Rick. You are the expert, so please enlighten us.
Well, we had some comments recently about some more entry level topics on our discussion, so I thought this might be a good one. At Crowd Content, we evaluate a lot of freelance writers who want to get involved in what we're doing. We see some experienced professionals. We also see some very amateur, just broke in, and I want to be a writer type of people come through. So I thought I'd take a minute, just go over a few of the smaller things I see that are definitely red flags of a new writer. And if you're getting into the craft, or let's say at your business, you've been tasked with creating content, blog posts, articles, site pages, whatever it may be, just take these tips and incorporate them in your writing, and they'll help you out. So let's start with first and foremost, and I see this a lot with new writers, and that's trying to sound either too smart or too creative, too poetic. Good, strong writing is conversational. If you wouldn't say it, if I wouldn't say it right here in this conversation to you, Carlos, I certainly shouldn't write it in copy that I'm creating. And that's word selection, phrase selection. I'll see our submissions come in, samples come in where it feels like that writer is really trying to make an effort to show how smart they are, and it's jarring, or there's an adjective every other word in flowery language, like they're trying to build up drama through creative writing in what should be commercial content writing. So avoid being too smart or too poetic in your writing. Keep it simple. Next up is avoiding platitudes and vague statements. So platitudes are kind of like the sayings that lack any punch now because they're overused. I wish I had an example of one right now, but I'm drawing a blank. But I can give you some words that are similar that now lack punch despite their definition because of their overuse. Words like very and great. These are meaningless in content. When it comes to sales content, those vague platitudes that don't have any actual meaning or relation to your product or service do you no good whatsoever. Stick to features and benefits. Focus on the pain points, the value, facts, data. But if you find yourself writing something that you've heard 1,000 times before, you're best cutting that out and just sticking to the facts. Third, professional content should almost never, ever, ever have exclamation marks, parentheses, or scare quotes. Drives me nuts. Now, if you look at an email from me or a Teams message, it'll be littered with parentheses and maybe exclamation marks and scare quotes. But I'm talking content writing. These things have no place. Exclamation points are probably the number one flag that you're looking at an amateur writer. And it kind of goes to that vague statement and platitude thing. They're overused, they lack punch, and it just doesn't quite fit in the way you're hoping it does. It doesn't come through to a reader that way. You should almost never use an exclamation point. Scare quotes are when you put quotes around a word as emphasis, or it almost expresses uncertainty on the writer's part. They're not actual quotations. It's saying something in a weird way, right? Kind of like the way I just did. Those are called scare quotes in content writing. Should not be there. In very, very casual blogs, maybe. If it's very casual, it's you speaking to your audience and that's part of your style, great. So be it. I use them all the time. Don't get me wrong, but not in my content writing. And then parentheses. Parentheses are kind of a lazy way to get something into a sentence when you may not otherwise know how to craft the sentence in a way that incorporates that information. So you stick a parenthetical on either in the middle of the sentence, the end of the sentence. Again, all over my emails and Teams messages, but should never, almost never be in content writing. With some exceptions, putting an acronym in parentheses after the first use, of course. But if you find yourself including thoughts in parentheses in your writing, that's a no-no. You're going to want to find a way to get that information into a sentence without using parentheses. Next up, active voice. You'll hear this all the time, but a lot of people don't understand what it is. So real basic here. Active voice is when the subject of the sentence is doing the thing. Passive voice is when the thing is happening to the subject. So the ball was thrown by me. That's passive. I made the ball the subject and threw it. But I threw the ball is active. I become the subject. I'm performing the action. So that's a really basic. It gets a little more complicated, but it's really important because readers engage more with active voice, and engagement is key. Right? We all want engagement on our site copy, on our blogs, on our articles, on our social media posts. And studies have shown readers prefer active and voice. It just speaks to them better. Now, that doesn't mean you should eliminate passive voice. It has its place. If you try to write every sentence in an article in active voice, it's going to be stilted. It's not going to flow correctly. It'll feel weird. But 90%, 10% is probably a good target. And last but not least, I'll make some quick colors. Time to value. Time to value is the amount of time a reader spends on your article before they finally get to the first piece of valuable information. It should be quick. If you find you're going on this whole narrative in your intro, you're laying foundational information. For example, let's say, an article on optimizing for SGE. If I start out with a lengthy intro and follow that up with the evolution of AI and LLMs and what is SGE anyway, and I'm 1,000 words in before I actually start giving tips about optimizing, that's a lengthy time to value, and your readers are likely to bounce. Get to value quickly. That's it.
So what you're saying is, when you go and want to try to find that recipe, you shouldn't hear about, the writer when they were a kid and telling you about how they dream about this food. It's one of my pet peeves.
It cracks me up that you bring up recipes. It's the example I always use when I'm talking about time to value is recipe articles are the worst at it.
Yeah, so it's not only good copywriting. Google keeps telling you, just give the goods right up front, right? Let's give people the answer. So not only for good copy, but also for good search results. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel when you write in active voice, you tend to be shorter and more straight to the point. Like when you if you're an active voice, your sentence actually uses less words than more words. And actually, in my point of view, less is more when you're copywriting.
Usually. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully people appreciate these tips. Definitely help us in that we apply them all the time when we're creating copy here, and also when we're evaluating writers and editors. And if you're not a writer, it's still good to know these things because you might be an editor or you're evaluating editors, writers, and you're a content marketer. Still, it's good for you to know good copy. All right. So, and I want to talk about an article that I saw from Ahrefs that summarizes very well what we think here about AI content. And again, we need to make a huge disclaimer. We're not against AI. Like if anything, we're pro AI. But what we're not in favor of, or we're not supporters of, is lazy content or low quality content. And when you produce content automatically, purely with AI, you tend to create at least mediocre content. And one of the points of this article is that AI produced content is essentially mediocre. And technically, it is mediocre. And why is that? Because LLMs are an average of the knowledge or the information that is out there. So essentially, when you create an AI, again, purely AI piece of content, it's going to be mediocre. It's going to be average because that's the definition and that's how the LLMs work. So the article talks about AI being an arbitrage opportunity and not a long-term strategy. And what they mean by that is, yes, you've probably seen in LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, all the people that are bragging about how they created 1,000 articles and created a lot of traffic with those articles. Yeah, can it be done? Yes. Is it sustainable? Probably not. And this article points especially to the SEO heist, right? These people that stole or took some URL or some sites URLs and created articles for those URLs and stole all their traffic. And they were bragging on the internet how they did that using pure AI. And then, they went and lost all the traffic. So the arbitrage opportunity is that there was a small window of time that they definitely got the traffic, but it always catches up to you, and low quality content is not going to be sustainable. So that traffic might be around just for a bit. So yeah, you can rank. Maybe you can find some low competitive keywords. That's the other thing that the article points out is that what they did is just they ranked a bunch of articles in very low competition keywords. There's always going to be long tail keywords and low competition keywords that you can rank maybe by not necessarily even with AI, just with low quality, cheap content. You could probably rank, but it's not going to be sustainable. And again, this is not only a take on AI content. It's also a take on cheap content, right? Like just kind of content mill, like low quality content, kind of content is not going to be a long-term strategy. Why it's not going to be a long-term strategy? Well, first and foremost, because if you can do it, anybody can, right? If it is, let's say, low barrier to entry, anybody can go to ChatGPT or any of these other tools, create all this content. If you did it easily and cheaply, well, somebody else can as well. So there is no competitive advantage. There's no moat, right? There's no strategic advantage. The other thing is like your readers, your audience, they're not gonna care for it, right? Because they're pretty much reading. There's nothing new. There's nothing of value. So that's the other reason. So again, very interesting article. Again, yet another reminder that AI content on its own, purely AI content, is not going to be a winning strategy in the long term. Yeah, you can maybe take advantage. There's going to be a small window of time where you can take advantage of it, but there's not much point of doing this. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Rick?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. There are gains to be made in the short term, but they're traffic gains. If your business is based at all on conversion, you're unlikely to get any of that. You need effective content to convert, and you're not going to get that type of content purely from AI. AI can assist with that, but yeah, unless your goal is just traffic and traffic in the short term, then I wouldn't waste my time.
And that's an amazing point because, again, traffic is just one thing. Like, it might be a leading indicator, but if your business is about selling a service, selling a product, well, traffic doesn't bring any money. What brings money is conversions. What brings money is purchases. So you might bring all the traffic in the world with all these maybe irrelevant keywords, but that's worth nothing, right? That is worth nothing if you're not converting, if you're not engaging. And if you think that you are going to convert and engage with purely AI created content, I don't think you're going to be up for a surprise. And look, what we were just talking about, even for businesses where the business is traffic, right? So media publishers, the business is traffic. They can monetize traffic because they have ads, right? But we just talked about what happened with the helpful content update. So anyway, another reminder, great article. We'll link it in the newsletter. So anyway, let's move on and let's talk about another hot topic. Is EEAT a ranking factor or not? So, Rick, you and I even have an internal debate about this because it's a very polarizing topic. And somebody came out with an article in the Search Engine Journal talking about this and wondering whether it is a ranking factor. And I think even Google, Dennis Sullivan said, well, it's not a ranking factor. Author bios are not a ranking factor, but they're principles for quality raters. So I don't know. I know for some people might be confusing and hard to follow. What does this mean? So maybe they're wondering, should we then follow EAT or not? If it is not a ranking factor, so then who cares? But I would love to hear your or to hear again your thoughts on this, Rick.
It's a causation correlation thing, Carlos, right? So EEAT principles themselves are not a ranking factor. If you go and you put an author byline, or you say your article has been medically reviewed by this expert, you are not going to get an instant SEO boost from that. Or follow any other EEAT principle. You're not going to signal to Google, look, I'm better now, bump me up a few spots. But what happens is that articles or content that follows EEAT principles get better engagement. Those are signals that can impact your rating or your ranking in search results. If your users are clicking and they're interacting with your content and they have long time on page, that signals positively to Google. Okay, so direct impact, no. But indirect, yes, and a very, very impactful one. Following EEAT guidelines is about user experience. Google does measure user experience through behavior on your page. Ryan Jones' article basically said, none of it has anything to do with ranking. If you're just looking to rank, you don't have to follow EEAT principles. Then this goes back to the whole, well, great. If you're just here for traffic, probably in the short term, there you go. You can do it. Forget EEAT. Don't pay for SMEs. Just get garbage out there and get it published. And if you target the right keywords, you'll probably rank in the short term. But if you're looking to do anything with that traffic, you're going to be out of luck. If you ask me, EEAT is a ranking factor because it impacts engagement on your page, and engagement very much signals to Google.
Yeah, so maybe what we might say is it's not a direct ranking factor, but it's an indirect ranking factor, and very important if you want to be found in search. So if you think that you're just going to create author bios and then rank magically because you created author bios on LinkedIn. That's not going to happen. And why do you need author bios if they're not a ranking factor? Well, there's another part. So besides engagement, like Rick mentioned, there's also trust. And then if you can generate trust in to your audience, so your audience is more likely to engage and also to share and also to link to your content. And we know that high quality links are also they help with your SEO. So again, don't dismiss EEAT. I think if we want to be technical, yeah, they're not technically a ranking factor directly, but they are very important if you want to have high quality content that has authority and that generates trust with your audience. So please, I mean, it's an interesting debate, but we are huge supporters of creating content with EEAT in mind. So I don't know, is there anything to add there to that conversation, Rick?
No, I think we covered it. Just we use SMEs with our internal content, and we don't do it so that we can check a box. We do it so that our content has insight and expertise and can be fact checked so that it's accurate, so that we feel confident that our readers are getting value from it. And I think we'll rank better for it, but not because we checked a box saying, we used an SME here.
Exactly. Yeah, well said, Rick. All right. Well, with that, let's move into our last topic for today, which is how to make content stand out and make it uniquely yours. That is very interesting, Rick. I want to hear about this. Okay.
Well, Carlos, we've built an AI content brief creating tool, and I use it to help create the content briefs for our internal content. And I kept finding myself adding a new section, a new component to that brief before we would send it out. And I called it, CC's take, before we give it to our writers to create. And that's where either you or me would come in and we'd put our insights. Here's our opinion on this subject matter, so that we're not relying on a writer to go and figure out what our opinion is for us. And I realized, this really needs to be in content briefs. So I've since built it into the brief tool. But essentially, we get hundreds and hundreds of content briefs from clients monthly, and I rarely see anything that provides that type of information to a writer. So these could be very detailed briefs that guide the writer from A to Z, give all the subheads, details, resources to go and look at. But what they don't do is provide anything personal to the business that's going to publish the content. So I've heard some people refer to it as point of view. So we can call it that for the purpose of this discussion. But if you're creating content briefs, consider putting a point of view component in. And there's several things that you can put in this point of view section, right? It could be quotations from internal SMEs relevant to whatever the subject matter is. So we have a guy who's our SEO guru. If we're publishing an article on SEO, I'm going to want to talk to him and get some quotes from him into the content brief, right? If we're going to publish an article that has to do with production, with workflows, I'll probably add some quotes to the brief myself for the writer. That's my niche. If not quotes, then what is your business's take, their opinion on whatever the topic is? For example, AI, it's a hot topic, right? We've talked about it all the time. We as a company, Crowd Content, we have a stance when it comes to AI. We have an opinion of it. And when our writers are creating content that talks about AI, we want that opinion to come through. We certainly don't want them developing it for us. Our opinion is ours, and it makes our content unique to us because it's, our opinion. Stories, like case studies, and I don't mean the content type of case study, but I could probably crack open a beer, Carlos, and talk about 100 stories from recent years of clients and issues that we've dealt with and how we've solved them, and just the craziness that is content marketing on a day-to-day basis and trying to meet demand of content at scale. That's great information that only our business has. And a lot of it would apply to a lot of the articles that we publish. We could get that information into this point of view section, discuss that, a time when a client did this and we did that, kind of like a mini case study, that the writer can incorporate some storytelling in their piece, but it makes your content yours. Nobody else has that story. A nameless freelance writer isn't going to go grab that story from some other publication and regurgitate it into yours. Highlighting proprietary methods, and in a way you get things like, don't explain something if you're doing a thing the same way that everybody else does a thing. There's no sense in including that. But if your business does something differently, it does it in a special way. Like, we believe this should be done like this. Get that in there for the writer to talk about. A couple other ways, embedding, obviously multimedia. That's not part of this. And forget I said that, actually. But get any testimonials from clients, or even interviews with clients if it's relevant to the subject matter, that you can get into that point of view. All of these things will help make your content unique as compared to your ranking competitors. They make it your content. It demonstrates that experience and expertise that Google is looking for, right? But you've got to give it to your writer. I highly encourage you to put that component in your content briefs and make sure you equip your writers with insights, thoughts, opinions, how-tos, the crowd content way, whatever you want to call it, the Acme way. But make sure that writer has that so it can be sprinkled into your content when they're writing it. What do you think about that, Carlos?
Yeah, I love. So I think the easiest and cheapest way to make unique content is insert your POV, insert your point of view, have your opinion. Does it have to be right or wrong? Opinions are neither right or wrong. They're opinions, but it's the cheapest way and easiest way to create unique content. And you know what? People want to hear your opinion. There's somebody that's going to want to hear it because maybe they want to debate it, or they want to have a counter opinion, or maybe it's going to confirm what they already think. So, but yeah, so if you wanna stand out, don't be afraid of having an opinion. I think it's scary sometimes. What if my opinion is gonna be polarizing? There's always anything that comes out of your mouth there's always gonna be somebody that's not gonna like it. 100%, I guarantee it. But there might be some that like it, and I'd rather create something that is controversial.
I struggle with that after these videos. Like, I have my opinions here, and I wonder, like, I hope I don't hear in the comments that. That I said something wrong, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, yeah, I mean, it does. Seriously, you want to be insightful.
But. Yeah, be bold with your content, because you don't want your content to taste like chicken. You don't want the content to be like plain vanilla, right? And that's what sometimes AI content does, and that's why we recommend not to use it purely AI, right? So again, have your opinion and inject some uniqueness to it. And with that, we can close today. So thank you, Rick, for another episode. And we continue to fail miserably at making this shorter. So we just keep talking. And I feel like we can talk here for hours. But for the sake of our audience, we're going to cut it here. Thank you very much for listening. We are Crowd Content. And you have Rick here, or Vice President of Content Creation. I'm myself, CEO. So if you need any help with, creating amazing content, just call us, or text us, or whatever way you want to communicate with us. But thank you again, and until the next one. Bye, Rick.
Bye, Carlos.